On October 7th, Israel was attacked by a military organization named Hamas. This attack and the subsequent bombing and invasion by Israel into the Gaza Strip has greatly increased the global attention on this conflict. But as a lot of people are saying, the conflict and history didn't start on October 7th. So let's get into a basic yet comprehensive history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. So this is the first part I'm making of a multi-part series. This video is going to be the part about the history leading up to the modern day. And the other videos are going to be more about what's happening right now and current geopolitics. So I'm going to be going through the history. And when I say a basic rundown, I mean basic. I'm not going to go through every detail. No one cares about which king ruled which year. Just explaining why we are where we are. So before I get into it, let's get out of the way some very basic context on why Muslims and Jews don't really trust each other for religious reasons. Now, this is a minor part compared to all the rest of the conflict, but understanding it is kind of important. It basically boils down to two things. The first is that there's some contradictions in the Quran whether Muslims should treat Jewish people as brothers or whether they should attack them if they don't convert. Not extremely clearly laid out in the writings. And the second one is basically that Jews and Muslims descended from two brothers, and those brothers didn't really like each other. They didn't get along. So yeah, there's some dumb religious stuff on why, I'm not gonna say it's dumb. There are some complicated religious reasons why there is some basic level of distrust. But honestly, the base religious reasons are a very small part of the conflict that exists today. It mainly revolves around the land that Israel is in. A long time ago, like 900 BC, Israel was mostly controlled by Jews. It was called Israel. Almost 1,000 years goes by. Rome conquers Israel and renames it to Palestine. Israel slowly becomes more and more Christian because the Roman Empire is Christian and becomes a Christian land. Then in the 600s, the 7th century, whatever you want to call it, there was an Arab conquest which included Israel, and Islam spread throughout the land. Now, boom! Israel is a holy land to 3 separate religions. That is going to cause no problems in the future. Well, it did. It caused a lot of problems. Some holy wars happened. There were 2 crusades from the Christians, yada yada. It's now controlled by the Ottomans. The Ottoman Empire was huge, but it is an Arab-based Islamic empire. They decided to keep the Roman name and considered the land to be called Palestine.
Then World War I happened.
The Ottomans were on the losing side of the war, and the land was taken over by Britain. And the land was taken over by the British. Something they really like doing. Yes, like every international conflict can be traced back to Britain and its colonialization. Like all of them. Colonizing the world for spices just to not use them. Mashed peas, bean and toast, motherfuckers. Remember guys, it's okay to be racist against British people. In 1917, the British, I can't do British accent. The British made the Balfour Declaration, which basically said that Israel belonged to the Jews. After World War I, the winners of the war basically just decided, let's divvy up the land of the losers however we want to, and make Germany pay reparations so hard they go broke. This isn't going to cause any issues. It caused issues. It caused a lot of issues. But we're going to focus on the issues that revolve around Israel. So, Britain declares that Israel is now a Jewish state. No way. I just want a stock image of a generic looking Jewish person. They're so bad. They're so racist. Oh my god. He's like holding a bill and saying, boo! Ah! I'm a Jew. They're so bad. Oh my god. Holy shit. They're so racist. I just want a normal stock image. That Israel is now a Jewish state. Hey, we've been living here for like 500 years. Yeah, said the Arab Muslims who had been living there for 500 years. Lol, you're brown? We don't care, said the Brits. Oh no, now there's fighting. You know that other issue caused in Germany from that really dumb World War I plan? Where they made Germany pay reparations so hard that they went broke? Well, they have Hitler now. And he doesn't really like Jewish people. So a bunch more Jews came to Israel to try and escape the Nazis, partially because places like America rejected them. Britain said no. They said, we already have enough of you, and tried to reject them. Well, the Jewish people escaping Nazi Germany were not too happy about that, so now everyone's fighting. Britain, looking at the mess they created, just said fuck it and left. That's pretty much a trend for everywhere in the world. Britain colonizing them, and after they screw everything up, Britain just like... So, after World War II, everyone kind of felt bad for the whole Holocaust thing. So the UN divided up the land, giving the majority of it to the European Jews, and giving some of it to the Muslim Arabs who had been living there. They also made Jerusalem the sharing is caring zone, and said that it would remain independent because like 3 different religions claim it, and that would be messy. The Arabs understandably were like, what? No, we live here, and we also have more people. So why do they get more land than us when we live here and also have more people? Well, sucks. Israel exists now, is what the international community said. Let's zoom out a little bit. All these countries surrounding Israel, well, they are Muslim majority countries that don't like Israel and don't really like Jewish people either. So in 1948, the Arab countries invade Israel. They do this to support what they now call Palestine. They lost. And then Israel kicked out more Palestinians out of their homes. This mass expulsion of Palestinians from their homes is known as the Nakba. Of course, before this, Palestinians were also kicked out of their homes, and a lot of them were killed too. But it started happening in mass around 1948. This included Israelis massacring entire villages, destroying houses, forcibly removing people from their homes. More than 700,000 Palestinian Arabs, which is more than half of the pre-war population, were kicked out of their homes and removed. And more than 15,000 Palestinians were killed in a mass series of over 70 massacres. Well, that's not the end of the conflict. In 1967, there was another war. Israel won again. And what is a trend now, they decided to divvy up more territory from the losers. Because that always goes wonderfully. Israel did return this portion back to Egypt in 1979. Which is part of the reason why Israel has a better relationship with Egypt than other countries surrounding it. But that leaves 2 important pieces of land, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Israel forced all the Palestinians in these 2 pieces of land. And yes, the Israelis forced a lot of Palestinians out of their homes to move into these areas because a lot of Israelis do kind of want a Jewish ethno-state, so Palestinians being in the land kind of ruins that whole thing. So yeah, that's why they forced them into these two pieces of land. After kicking them out of their homes into two pieces of land, Israel was like, that is not enough, and started making settlements in the land that they kicked the Palestinians into, and started encroaching more and more of it, kicking the Palestinians that they already kicked out of their homes again to take more land. This led to more violence and a lot more violent conflicts. This included a group founded in Egypt that also operated out of multiple other countries, called the Palestine Liberation Organization, or also known as the PLO. They started attacking Israel and would also commit some terrorist attacks. This resulted in Israel invading Lebanon, and then a bunch of other conflicts happened too between that organization, other organizations, a lot of tension between the countries, violent conflicts often happening. And this continued until we are at the point that we are now, with Israel officially controlling this land and this land being Palestinian. Kinda. Not really. Some additional information about the Palestine Liberation Organization, or also known as the PLO. Before 1993, they were a violent military organization. But in 1993, after the Oslo Accords, PLO recognized Israeli sovereignty and acknowledged that Israel deserves to live in peace and that they want an independent Palestinian state for the territories that Israel has been occupying since the 1967 war, and started trying to normalize talks between Israel to get a two-state solution. The PLO leader even renounced terrorist acts and acts of violence against Israel. This started falling apart more in the early 2000s, and in 2018, the PLO officially withdrew their acknowledgement of Israel until Israel acknowledges Palestine as its own state with the pre-1967 borders. First, the Gaza Strip. It's made up of mostly poor Palestinian Muslim Arabs, and they're forced out of where they live into that small piece of land. And currently, about half of the Gaza Strip is miners. Israel basically controls everything in the Gaza Strip, from energy to water, and they even have a full land and sea blockade on the Gaza Strip, basically making sure that the Gaza Strip can have zero economic development because they cannot trade. Israel also lets no one leave this small strip of land, and it is surrounded by a border that is guarded with the military. The only time people can leave is for temporary work permits, where people in the Gaza Strip go into Israel for low wages to do manual labor. But they get sent right back afterwards, making the Gaza Strip essentially an open-air prison. The second piece of land is the West Bank, which is a complex web of borders and land restrictions, which the IDF, which is the Israeli military, basically treats like it's their land. Israel also has state-sponsored settlers which move into this area. So what these settlers do is they use Israel's military strength to kick Palestinians out of their homes and then replace the Palestinians with Israeli Jews. They do this to make neighborhoods more Jewish as a way to ethnically replace the Palestinian Muslim Arabs. They literally just take their home.
The Abu Rajab family is slowly but surely being forced from the cluster of apartment buildings which are their ancestral family home. Israeli settlers arrived on July 25th, broke into 3 of the apartments and moved in. Within hours, the army turned the site into a closed military zone, in effect providing protection to the settlers and restricting the Abu Rajab's access to their own home. We asked this man if the settlers will leave. He says never. We've lived here for 2,000 years.
Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
it's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, ya ammi.
And remember, The reason that these Palestinians are living in the West Bank is because Israel originally forced them there. And then they're taking their homes again. So basically you have Israel, then you have a small strip of land that's an open-air prison, and finally an apartheid state that Palestinians are forced to live in, can't freely move around in, and are constantly kicked out of their homes in. That leads us to where we are today. Israel has all the power. Israelis hate Palestinians, and Palestinians hate Israelis. Something I wanted to add that is pretty directly related to the Israel-Palestine conflict that I don't think I made clear enough is that the history of the Jewish people is a history of persecution. For hundreds of years, the Jewish people have been targets of genocide, being pushed out of society, being killed, being blamed for almost everything. The history of Jewish persecution and anti-Semitism goes long before Nazi Germany and still continues into today. For example, until very recently, most Christians blamed the death of Jesus on the Jews. If in medieval Europe crops failed to grow, the first people that were always blamed were the Jews. And today, in America, Jewish people have the most disproportionate hate crimes committed against them. They are the root of almost every single conspiracy theory. Jews controlling the world is like the essential base to almost any conspiracy theory if you dig deep enough. It is the biggest conspiracy theory. Jewish people have lived and do live in a world that is very hostile to them. And I believe it's very important for people to recognize that. However, previous genocides of the Jewish people do not justify Israel committing a genocide now. I believe it is extremely important to take into account the pain, suffering, and trauma a lot of Jewish people have, while also taking into account the pain, suffering, and trauma that Palestinians are currently experiencing. Also, conflating Zionism and Israel with the Jewish people as a whole is in itself anti-Semitic. The amount of hate crimes against Jewish people has drastically increased recently after October 7th, which is honestly disgusting because they have no involvement with Israel's war crimes. That is an Israel thing, not a Jewish thing. Thank you for watching the video on the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe and comment what you think. If you disagree with anything that was said here, let me know. I'd love to hear. If you think some small detail was wrong or I should have brought something up that I didn't, again, comment. I love getting your comments. Also, like I said, there are more videos coming out that are a part of this video. I actually took this video that was longer and split it into multiple parts, which this is the first of. So make sure to subscribe to my channel and look out for those in the future. They might be linked in the comments if they are already uploaded. Stay safe.